Welcome back, and if you're new here, welcome. In this video, I thought I would talk about some potential energies of this month, March 2023. This is just what I felt intuitively and what I've been inspired to share. And I think as a collective and as a humanity, we can all feel similar things when it comes to change in our world. It just may be in different ways. Our experiences are unique and are determined by our overall perspective and consciousness. So although we may share in a collective experience and collective energies, the individual day-to-day experience is determined by our own unique perspective and individual consciousness. And that can be affected by what our individual soul is doing internally, like what we're trying to accomplish within at a spiritual level can seem to be reflected in our physical experience or in our day-to-day life. So inner purification, inner transformation can look differently for everyone. So always listen to your inner voice when it comes to receiving anything from the world. I felt inspired to speak of this energy of March as a culmination of the last few years and the different changes that have taken place internally and externally. I've felt this quite a bit over the last 6 months. I felt this quite a bit over the last several years, but more so the last 6 months, there seems to be a lot of change that I've realized related to the past and the last few years. So there's been a lot of change over the last few years in the world as well, and I'm sure in your individual lives. And to me, this is a period where it's much different than it's ever been. And I think people have learned quite a bit over the last few years, and that knowledge has seemed to come together in different ways. It seems like there's been a momentum building within the collective in the direction of a greater good. And I think March is a time where things are really culminating and moving forward. Hopefully, this is a message that some of you need to hear. Maybe it aligns with some of you and what you've gone through in your personal experience. If you reflect upon where you are now, as far as your perspective about yourself, others, and your life, your world, I'm sure it's very different than it was a few years ago. And the changes that have taken place over the last few years, or even over the years over your lifetime, can quicken and increase the consciousness within at different times, like at a different pace. So sometimes the work that we've been doing on ourselves integrates over time, then starts to really come together in a way that's more known and more understood to our conscious awareness. So reflect on the last few years, the change in perspective that's taken place within yourself and your world, as well as the collective. Around this time, there may be a culmination of change and momentum felt or experienced that really opens paths up or creates some kind of forward momentum. That can mean a greater realization of what needs to change from within. It could be a stronger willingness to make certain changes, or it could be feeling like more of your whole self is becoming integrated. It could be feeling like things are really starting to make sense. When the whole self becomes integrated, any resistance felt or experienced is temporary. It's only what is denying that process and that state of wholeness that becomes known. So that's what we kind of work through, is that resistance of anything within, any causes within that are denying our own wholeness or denying our own unity or denying the belief in a supreme good. And I think the last few years, there's been a greater integration of the world consciousness, and that has caused some resistance to be felt and known in order for that to be transformed, in order for those causes to be transformed. And I think this time period, there's a momentum leading in the best direction for greater change to take place for the good of all people. Part of this process is learning to trust that inner voice that we all have within. There is a part of us that will always internally seek to fully become whole and complete. It will always seek to be more lovely or loving, to be more perfect in our love, like unconditional love or loving impersonally, which means there's an inner impulse to do good and improve. So this month there could be that time where this inner impulse for improvement could be really felt, or that impulse to really feel whole and complete becomes a reality. It could be a culmination of the last few years. If there's been a change from within, this may mean that the desired physical changes will start to come into physical form. And the inner part of us knows how to build. It knows how to rearrange things in the right way and make things come together for the best direction and the best outcome. And if there's doubt in this, try to see where that doubt is coming from and what is going on with inner dialogue. In order to rise, we kind of have to have some kind of awareness of what has been pulling down, or some kind of understanding of our own mentality and how this inner part of us really works. So along with a loving self-reflection, lifting consciousness to a more expanded, abundant view, even for a moment, can be really helpful. Things can change instantly when we really decide within ourselves with sincerity, when we try to take interest in life, even if it's, even for a moment, trying to be more thankful, to praise, to try to find some inner peace. It's reaching that point of equilibrium within the heart rather than swinging back and forth with thoughts and feelings and reactions. So even a moment of uplifting consciousness can create lasting change, like in your life and in your world. So remind yourself that you're here to remember who you are spiritually, to live life and to experience life, not to deny that inner part of you, and not to just sit and watch life go by or others live their life and experience life. And if you've gone through a lot of internal change in your life and physical change in your life, and if you've noticed a greater change in your perspective over the years, particularly over the last few years, this could be a time where things really begin to move forward. And I really haven't felt like that over the last few years. At certain times I did, but I think recently, particularly over the last 6 months, I've really felt this momentum kind of building with things moving forward, not just individually in group consciousness, but within the world and as a collective. So this knowledge and wisdom that you've gained can be applied to your life and in your experience in a greater way. And that's because of what you've experienced. There could be more inner confidence because of what you've already learned and what you've already gone through. Finding a way to still the mind and affirming the idea of a supreme good as the ultimate truth. Like the supreme good is something that doesn't change. So we have all these different things that change that correspond to these inner principles or these unchanging attributes that are universal. So reminding and affirming that supreme good as the ultimate truth, as what is eternal and unchanging, can be really helpful. That way you align with that point of equilibrium within your heart more and more. And then from that point, you may feel more inspiration, more intuitive guidance, or you may hear that inner voice more clearly. I realized the swinging back and forth of thoughts, feelings, and different experiences had a lot to do with needing to reach that point of equilibrium within my own self. So rather than imagining all the things I wanted, I had to kind of self-reflect for a little bit. I just had to learn to be still and make it more about trying to connect with love from within and some sense of unity within, and then allowing myself to think about future goals without too much attachment to those goals or to how it comes about. So the inner self already has a complete view of what the best direction is and what would bring the most fulfillment, what the best outcome is. It's just learning to align ourselves with that innermost part of ourselves and hear that inner voice. And if this is something that you've been working on, this could be a time where you see some results due to that inner change, or you see some kind of forward momentum and things kind of culminating, especially related to the last few years. I love you guys, and I hope this was helpful.